Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I am your host, Michele Irby Johnson, and this is Life Matters with Michele. This is where we talk about issues and matters that concern the African American community. And so I'm so excited to be with you on today. Just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for our guests, please post them so I can field them over to her. But this is an exciting time, and I'm so happy to introduce my guest, Miss Thecia Jenkins. Please help me if did I say that right, sweetie?
You said it right.
Awesome, awesome. I don't like messing up people's names, and I don't like when they mess mine up. All right, so I just wanted to invite everybody to just join us, tune in, grab a friend, grab a buddy, and have them tune in today. Miss Thecia Jenkins is going to be talking about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Let me introduce her to some of you. Some of you know her because she's been on the show before, but she's back again to talk about something even more poignant that we need to be, tuning in on ourselves. She is the training director with the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council in Houston, Texas, and she oversees curriculum development, community outreach, and training for law enforcement, healthcare providers, educators, corporate companies, clergy, social services, and the like. She's an independent speaker and a consultant that works with nonprofits and small businesses internationally. She does seminars on intimate partner violence, trauma-informed care, and emotional intelligence, as we're going to talk about on today, communication and cultural competence. Her favorite quote is, "No significant learning occurs without relationship." And I honestly agree with that. Hello, my dear, my friend, Miss Thecia. Say hello to the people.
Hello, hello, hello. And I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We had such a rich time back in October. And so I just had to have you back. But I wanted to let everybody know, okay, we're talking about emotional intelligence. Now, a lot of people, they lean into, IQ. What's your IQ? And I'm like, okay. But I heard somebody else say, I can't remember what I was watching. They were like, I would much rather have emotional intelligence rather than IQ. So if you can explain to our audience, what is emotional intelligence?
Well, thank you for asking. When I think of emotional intelligence, what comes to mind is my grandmother, and you probably heard your grandmother or, older people as you were coming up say the same thing, that person, they may have a good education and they so smart, but they couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper sack because they got no common sense.
Yes.
As I reflect back on that, I now understand what she was saying, that definitely IQ is important. We cannot downplay that. Our ability to learn different things, it sets us apart in the careers that we can have and the different opportunities. However, emotional intelligence is something that is a basic, essential skill, if you will. Yeah. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, we're talking about our ability to how we perceive ourselves, how we express ourselves. It is also how we cope with the challenges of life. Mm-hmm. It is about our ability to have empathy and to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And it's about developing and nurturing relationships. That is emotional intelligence.
Okay, you said something real key because, we starting off early. You said something about people knowing themselves. We live in a society where people care more about who someone else is, but they don't take the time to get to know who they are. And it brings me to a movie. I know this is going to be a really weird reference. It takes me to a movie called The Runaway Bride. Mm-hmm. And so every person she was engaged to, she pretty much became what they were or liked what they liked. If he liked eggs Benedict, she liked eggs Benedict. If he liked eggs with cheese, she liked. And so she never knew what she liked because it was more hinged on the other person. And she had to take a minute after another breakup to find out, what kind of eggs do I like? And so that makes me think, if people don't know themselves, how do they expect other people to know them?
Exactly.
How do they do it? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. So in talking about that self-awareness, and there's a book called The Leadership Challenge. And I always love to give resources as I'm going along, because I believe that you are your own best educator. I consider myself to be like a facilitator. I'll come and I'll stir the water up, but then it's up to you to go in. And so as I go along, I may share different resources. And again, the book is called The Leadership Challenge, and it is by the authors Posner and Kouzes, Kouzes. And then the other gentleman is Posner, Posner. You can find that on Amazon.com. And it's called the Leadership Challenges. And they talk about the 5 exemplary practices of effective leaders. And this has been a study that's been going on now for almost 40 years, where they interview world-renowned leaders from all over the world. And one of the first pieces of being an effective leader is self-awareness. Being able to identify who you are, being able to identify the emotions that you have, being able to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. And in fact, when I'm working with clients, I have them to do a SWOT analysis. And when we usually think about a SWOT analysis, we think about from marketing and business.
Right.
What I remind people, and for those who are watching today and will watch the replay, what I want to remind you is that you are the president, CEO, and founder of YOU Incorporated. So it doesn't matter who signs your paycheck. At the end of the day, you are the owner of this temple. You are the owner of the assets and the gifts that you have. And in order to properly market it, you have to know what kind of eggs you like. You have to know if you like eggs or not. Correct? Right. Because here's the thing, if you don't know what you stand for, then you can be easily swayed. Here's the thing about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A will not be open on Sunday because what? They've done a SWOT analysis. They know what their core values are, and their core value is faith and family. And so you will not see them opening on Sunday, no matter who else opens on Sunday. And we have to be able to bring that to the table for ourselves, that I don't like eggs. And no matter whether it's Easter or if it's brunch, I'm not eating eggs because I don't like eggs. And here's the thing, that can only happen when we've done self-awareness. So that is probably the first step that I encourage people to look at when we're talking about emotional intelligence, because that's based on our self-perception and our self-expression. So yes, self-awareness is key.
Absolutely. And so going to that self-awareness, a lot of people, I'll say this, people that I've run into, they're almost afraid to find out who they really are, because they're afraid that the other people are going to see the real them. And I think this is just me, and you're the expert. And I think that puts them in a dangerous place where they would much rather show who other people want to see as opposed to who they are. We have a question from our audience that says, how do you identify and manage emotional intelligence instead of other people?
Well, so with emotional intelligence, it's really, here's what I often share, is that it's about managing yourself and managing your relationships. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you are controlling other people or managing other people, but you are managing that relationship. And here's the thing, naturally, when you're able to better manage yourself, guess what? You're better able to deal with the people around you. Example, I love this morning from our sermon from my pastor, passage of scripture about not letting our anger take control of us. Well, that comes down to emotional intelligence as well. So that if you and I are in having a conversation and maybe the way you express yourself really irritates me. And then maybe you say something that just really makes me kind of lose it in that moment. And we call that having an amygdala hijack, and we can talk about that as well. But in that moment, I just kind of feel like I can feel my blood boiling, I can feel my stomach churning, and I am like on edge. I have a decision to make in that moment. I can either tell you off, or I can count to 10 in my head. And here's the thing: it's also scriptural that our words can stir up anger. Correct? So in that moment, I have a choice to make. Do I just go off on her? Do I tell her like it is, or again, do I take that deep breath and go, "Wow, Michele, I'm sorry you feel that way, and maybe we can talk about this at another time. Would tomorrow be better?" And so you may have been ready to go right back at me. But in that moment, it's like, oh, she didn't come for me. And so here's the thing. I've managed our relationship. I've managed the outcome of that interaction, because what I was first willing to manage myself, and in managing myself, I've now managed that interaction. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does, because there are oftentimes people, they have the expectation that you're going to go off because that's what you used to do. They forget, or they don't realize that you're no longer that person. You don't think that way or what have you. But because you've been privately managing yourself and now you're bringing it to the public eye, people have an expectation. And if you would have normally or ordinarily gone off and then you don't, they're like, what's going on with her? And then they want to prod you and say, what's wrong with you? Usually you want to flick off, or usually you want to, and you just have to learn how to package it so that they'll know that's just not the lane I'm in anymore. I am managing me, my emotions, my responses, and or my reactions, because they are two different things. Would you agree?
Exactly.
Yeah, because reactions are what we do on a knee jerk, right? Just immediate, and responses are what we think through. So that's amazing. We have a question that says, how do you discern different emotions and label them appropriately?
And that's the biggest part of emotional intelligence. For the people who are watching now that will watch later, if they simply, I love to refer people to Google University. That's a really awesome university. And if you go to Google University and simply put in emotions chart, and there's several that will come up, and there's one that is color based, and I love that one. However, there's a very simple one that I've actually used as part of doing violence prevention with youth, where it just simply has all the different emotions, like little facial, and you can take that, print it out, and put it up on the refrigerator. And if you have young children, or even if you have teens, being able to help them in the morning start their day off and say, so which one of these are you experiencing today? That is just that basic. And here's the thing, is that many times most people have not been taught how to identify their emotions. Case in point, when I've been in classrooms talking to youth and even talking to adults about relationships and about preventing violence in relationships, and talking to corporations about conflict management, when I ask the question about what is anger, or do they know when they're getting angry, I would say about 75 to 85% of the time people have no idea. And there's actually this particular exercise that I do, and I'll be very brief, is where I choose two people, or I ask two people to volunteer to come up in front of the whole class. And I then have those two individuals to start walking towards each other, and at random moments I'll say stop. So maybe they start off like this, and then eventually they're like this. By the time they get this close together, they either started laughing or they try to bypass each other. You can tell that they're getting nervous as they get closer to each other. And then at the end of that experiment, I then ask them, tell me what you were feeling. I will tell you, in about 20 years of doing that exercise, and this was even before I started doing emotional intelligence training, that when I would ask, tell me what you were feeling the closer that you got, over 90% of the time, Michele, people were not able to tell me what they were feeling. They would say, I don't know. And that's the problem. I believe that's the problem that we are seeing today in today's world, is that people have no idea what they are feeling. So we have to get to basics and help people to identify what they are feeling. And that starts from a very early age, that when you have your toddler and they in the middle of Walmart, they're stretched out, and your first impulse is to snatch them up. How you want to also have a conversation, say, so tell me, what are you feeling? Well, they may be feeling frustrated. They may be feeling that they're being denied something, whatever the case may be, but helping them to identify that emotion. And here's the other part, is that we so easily go to emotions about, I'm angry. And when I've had people to process what that means to be angry, probably over 80% of the time, when we talk that through,
it's not anger.
It wasn't anger.
Mm-mm.
It may have been embarrassment. It may have been shame. It may have been fear.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been feeling isolated. But the go-to is anger. So we have to help people to explore what is at the root of anger, because anger is a very true and real emotion.
It is.
But we don't just wake up angry.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you said something about the toddler, or, when people, when a child is acting up or whatever, and you want to ask them where they are, how they're feeling. And I think that as a society, we have done a bang up job, and I don't mean this in a positive manner, in teaching people to cover their emotions, how they're really feeling. And so, if we want to delineate between men and women, boys are taught, don't cry, don't show this, don't show that, be the tough guy, be the whatever. And so they grow up, and then when they show emotion, they're considered to be weak or too effeminate or whatever the case may be. And so how do you, as a practitioner, I'm a counselor, but you as a practitioner, how do you help them to discover and or uncover where they really are? Because you just said there was a process. 80% of the people, after you've combed through the situation, it wasn't anger at all. Anger was just their first thought process, but uncovering it was embarrassment, it was this, it was that. How do you get them to uncover and discover where they are emotionally?
It's just about asking questions. And here's the thing, we don't like to ask questions. Mm-mm. It's that simple. So tell me what you were experiencing when that happened. For example, a common example that happens we'll say in the classroom, that maybe someone falls and everybody starts to laugh, and then the person gets up and they get up cussing. Being able to process that and say, so when you got up or when you were on the ground, tell me what was going through your mind. Well, I was thinking that they thought I was stupid and I was clumsy. Mm-hmm. And having them to process that, again, getting into those thoughts, because we have a thought that is based on a belief, and then it becomes an action. So asking people, what was going through your mind? What was the thought process? Because here's the thing, our thoughts can have us to spiral out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's really about learning how to have a conversation. It's about learning how to communicate, because our emotions are attached to our thoughts.
Yes.
And in order to tease that out, we've got to learn how to have conversations with one another. I believe that, based on just my own personal experience, that I have evolved as a parent. I have an adult child, and I look back and I think there were some things I could have done much differently at the onset, but I was not given those tools.
Right.
You look at your career and you think, wow, maybe I could be further ahead. But many times we don't have the tools. And in our relationships, our intimate relationships, how many marriages, how many friendships could be saved if we only learn how to effectively communicate?
Absolutely.
Versus being offended by what someone said or did.
Absolutely.
And really getting to the heart of and saying, so what was going through your mind when you said XYZ to me? Mm-hmm. And that's how you can begin to tease out some of those emotions that people are experiencing, and helping them to actually, to identify them. And again, going back to that emotions chart, I really want to encourage people to find that, download it, and begin to look at all the different emotions that are out there, that anger is not the only choice. Anger is not the only option. Looking at what underlies anger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, in that teasing out, when you're asking the questions, and taking it from a counselor's perspective, when I ask questions to certain people, they get offended because I'm asking questions. I'm like, okay, this is your journey. So in order for you to get where it is that you're expecting, in order for you to understand what you're dealing with, how to get to the other side of your change or, metamorphosis or whatever, I have to ask questions. Now, answer them or not, but they are a tool. Questions are a tool for me to help you see where you are and to help you hear what you're saying.
Right.
Because oftentimes people don't understand until they hear themselves, and they're saying, wow, I never believed that. And so I think it's good that you take the time, of course, we both know that it takes that teasing, that combing through, but a lot of people get frustrated with themselves because they don't know how to put a name to it. They don't know how to, like you say, identify it. And their first course is, I'm angry. You're not really angry. You're scared. You're not really angry. You are embarrassed. You feel guilty or whatever the case may be. So that is really, really rich. And so the significance of emotional intelligence, I think you touched on that, but if you can round back to that, what is the significance of it? Is self-awareness, is it anything beyond that? Or how do we, work through that?
Definitely. Well, I believe that emotional intelligence is significant across the board. We can use it in our relationships. We can use it at work. We can use it in our friendships. And I actually have a method that I created as a result of learning more about emotional intelligence, and it encompasses the framework. And so I'll just share that with you, talk about the significance. I often, if people follow me, they'll see that many times I'll have hashtag bold or live bold. And I've been having that for probably over a decade. And what the bold stands for is about becoming self-aware. So that's that self-awareness piece. The O is for owning your actions. The L is for leaning in and listening. And the D is for developing and nurturing relationships. Well, what does all that have to do with life in general? Well, number one, as we said, you have to know who you are. You have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You have to know what your trigger points are. So that's that becoming self-aware. The owning your actions is really a lot about your mindset and your ability to be resilient. Yeah. And so when I talk about owning your actions, it's about going through this pandemic and at the onset in March, not knowing what was going to happen. And so immediately we go into panic, or I'll make it personal and talk about Thecia. I went into panic because here's the reality that my career, what I believe to be my call is teaching and training, which traditionally has been done face to face in large rooms. And so here I was thinking, I've got a 9-to-5 and I also have my own business. And both of those businesses rely on my ability to be standing in front of an audience. So I immediately was like, oh my heavens, what's going to happen? I've got bills to pay. How am I supposed to survive? And after going through a little wind down, I finally came to myself and said, hold up, wait a minute. There's more than one way to educate people.
Yes.
So that also involves what we call a growth mindset, Mm-hmm. And so taking that into account, what I realized is that, you know what, you can go online. You've been doing Facebook Lives forever. You've had a Zoom account forever. Use that. And so here's the thing, that as we wind down, one of the questions you asked me at the onset, well, how have things been going? Well, with my 9-to-5, here's the thing. I ended up with more opportunities to train than at the beginning of the year. Wow. In my own business, I ended up doing more business. I've had more opportunities to coach. Why? Because I was willing to do a shift, do a pivot. And that's about, again, owning your actions. It's about our ability to manage stress and to remain optimistic. So that's owning your actions. Then we talk about leaning in and listening. Well, that's all about empathy, being able to connect. The first two are about yourself. The second part of emotional intelligence is about how we handle relationships. And empathy is a huge part of that. One of my coaches, Jonathan Sprinkles, who is an amazing man, and he's also known as the connection coach. He talks about the power of connection. the power of connection, that when you are talking to people, when you are in relationship with people, and when they know that you get them, that you may not necessarily agree with them, you may not appreciate their lifestyle or whatever the matter may be, but you get them and you're able to put yourself in their shoes and go, how would Michele want to receive this information? How would Onika want to receive this information? Why is, being able to ask myself, I wonder why Onika felt that way or why she behaved that way, and being able to sit back and go, you know what? I get it now. And so now I have a new way to go back and to approach her. And so that helps us what? That helps us in sales. That helps us as teachers. That helps us as, whatever form of career that you may be in. It helps us as friends. It helps us as intimate partners. Yeah. And then that final piece about developing and nurturing relationships is really about our ability to embrace diversity. And definitely also in this past year, not only with the pandemic, we've had the social unrest around racial injustice, is that we have to learn to embrace the diversity around us. For the first time in history in the workplace, we've got, I think it's 5 generations in the workplace. Wow. And with remote working, how do we appeal to those different styles? That also about developing and nurturing relationships. One of the things when I'm sharing with corporate or dealing with leadership training is I encourage people that here's the thing, you should be always on the outlook for your replacement. And that scares people. Yeah. Especially those who are not emotionally intelligent. Because the thought of replacing myself means that there will be fear that will come up. And when I talk about learning how to replace yourself, that whether you are in corporate, whether you have your own business, that you have to learn how to seek out talent and say, you know what, Maria is really good at XYZ. And you know what, if I trained her to do this other task, it would free me up.
Absolutely.
But if I don't have a sense of self-awareness, which is my self-confidence, my belief in myself, if I don't have the ability to be optimistic and to be resilient, if I can't connect, then I say, I'm not going to teach Maria that because then she'll take my place. Well, you want Maria to take your place because when Maria takes your place, guess what? It opens the door for new opportunity for you. But you've got to be mentally in a place to recognize that because Maria has that gift and because you teach her something new, is that what? You now can then move forward in another gift that you have.
Absolutely. But that's that insecurity piece.
And that's the importance of self-awareness, is that when you are self-aware, insecurity, and here's the thing, I'm not going to lie to you because I don't believe in blowing smoke up people's skirts. Insecurity will always be with us. That's just a part of human nature. But how you manage that insecurity, when insecurity whispers in your ear and says, well, Onika thinks she's doing all this and that you can then whisper back. No, yell back to insecurity. Onika's walking in her call.
Yeah.
And there's room enough for both of us.
Absolutely. And I think, and if we put it out on the table, whether it's in mainstream or in the church, this competitive spirit is often unhealthy because we're looking to sabotage somebody else's greatness because we're not confident in who we are. You know what I mean? And so that insecurity piece, like you said, is always with us. But how do we manage it? How do we look at it and say, you know what? God has gifted me with what he's gifted me to do. How do I make it work for me in this sphere, in this arena, in this job or whatever? Because like you said, there is so much of what's being done to go around for everybody. There's not just one Thecia that can do this. You're not the only one that can do it. You do an absolutely amazing job, but there maybe somebody else that has a different audience doing the same thing. And so I think we need to get out of the mindset that yes, we want to. I always tell people, I said, you need to be training your folk to take your job so that you can move on. I tell them the exact same thing. Even pastors, stop holding on to the pulpit so tight. You got people behind, you got 50 ministers on your board, right? And you don't give them opportunity to do nothing but say amen from the first quarter. And then wear your collars once a month. For what? Who are you training to take your place? Where is your succession plan? Right. Okay. And so it goes back to, this is not a space where God has not called us to compete at all. And if we know who we are and whose we are, and that we're fearfully and wonderfully made in all that we do, then there's no competition. If anything, I can learn from you. Iron sharpeneth iron, right?
Exactly.
And you can learn from me. And so when people don't know that, and they don't know about their triggers and their weaknesses, then it becomes this gruff as opposed to a relationship. Amen.
Exactly.
Somebody says, what are the disadvantages of emotional intelligence, especially when a person is experiencing difficulties and they feel underdeveloped?
You know, in talking about the disadvantages, there's actually an article I ran across, probably at the beginning of the year, and it was called The Dark Side of Emotional Intelligence. I think there's always opportunity for growth. So that's how I'll start off by answering that. I think that any tool can be misused. Mm-hmm. So here's the other part of that, is that if I am empathetic, I'm able to lean in and listen, that definitely that skill can be used to manipulate. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the importance of individuals working with either emotional intelligence practitioner, a counselor, whatever the case may be, having someone to guide them. Yes. And I hope that's answering the question. I think that for people who may find themselves feeling the imposter syndrome, so we hear a lot about the imposter syndrome. Yes. That, what if people find out that I'm really not that great of a leader, that I'm not that great of a parent, whatever the case may be, that person's at a disadvantage because they're missing out on opportunities. They're missing out on opportunities, which is why I think that emotional intelligence is so important, that teaching this as an essential skill. And I see that Onika had put up there earlier that this is something that should be taught in schools, and most definitely. And in fact, many school districts, I'm here in Houston, Texas, and there are programs here that deal with what they call social emotional intelligence. And that is being more taught in schools. I think in New York, there is a big campaign for that as well. And as I said earlier, it starts from infancy, teaching our children about how to identify their emotions, teaching them about the importance of things such as impulse control. Impulse control. That's huge. Yes. I once asked an audience, I said, do you ever lie? And of course, nobody was going to raise their hand. They lying then. Exactly. But what makes us lie? And there's many people have heard, again, I told you I'll give you resources. Brene Brown. I absolutely love Brene Brown. And that's B-R-E-N-E. B-R-E-N-E Brown. And I actually have had the opportunity to meet her on several occasions. Did some work with her early on before she got Oprahized. But she wrote the book Daring Greatly. I can't think of the other two books. But at any rate, she tells about the cookie story. And the cookie story is that she, of course, was working on her doctoral degree at the time. She was teaching full-time. She continues to teach full-time part-time at the University of Houston. So to move the story along, her children went to a private school, and every year they would have a bake sale. Mm-hmm. And so each parent was told, hey, we need you to make cookies or pies or whatever and give to this bake sale. Well, she's working on a dissertation. She's teaching at the University of Houston, and she's writing her first book. About shame. She's known as a shame and resilience expert. And she's like, I just didn't have the time. And so she goes, I decide. So I go to the event and I run by, I think she went to Kroger's or someplace and bought some cookies. And she gets there. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. She just went. And she goes, she didn't buy any cookies. She just showed up. So anyway, there's a group of parents standing around talking, group of moms. And one of the moms reaches for the cookies and she goes, "Ooh, those cookies are so good." And she goes, "I wonder who made those." And Brene Brown says, "Before I knew it, I said, I made them." And she says, I don't know why I said that. I have no idea why I
Oh
said
my
that.
God.
But when she thought about it and processed it, what she realizes in that moment, she felt such shame because here she was working on her dissertation, teaching at probably one of the most known colleges. Her husband, he's a professional. I mean, they live in a nice neighborhood, but she didn't have time to make a batch of cookies. And in that moment, she experienced mommy shame.
Mm.
And in her shame, she told a lie.
Wow.
And we can take this spiritual and go biblical. In Genesis, when God said, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to self-awareness right there. Where are you?
Yep.
Where are you? Because of a lie. We learn to hide ourselves because of a lie. Because when we are ashamed, when we are embarrassed, when we are fearful, we will lie.
Yeah.
Everybody lies. And that's a part of emotional intelligence, is then being able to ask myself, why did I lie?
Yeah.
Because we do it to protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say it's a protective mechanism. That's exactly what it is.
I hope that makes sense.
It made a lot of sense because people, for fear of being found out, because you talked about the imposter syndrome, they don't want people to find out who they really are. I wrote on here, we're missing opportunities to be authentically ourselves. Yeah. And some of us are afraid to be ourselves. And I'm I've grown into this now. It took me some moments, some years to understand who Michele really is. And so now I'm so authentic. I think people are like, this girl she's just too honest, because life is too short for me to act like I'm somebody else, for me to act like I believe something else, or I feel something else. And my husband, I said, this is just who I am. This is who they get. The funny me, the not so funny me, the serious me. My Bible study students, they're like, oh my gosh, she doesn't play. I said, I don't have time to play. Maybe 15 years ago, if I was doing this, and I'd have been like, well, they won't know. They're not really going to go read it anyway. I have to be authentically me in order for you all to get the organic me. And that's not to say I'm mean and I'm nasty and all of that, but God forbid, I don't want to fall into that, that impulse of to tell a fib or what have you. You know what I mean? So I love that. I say we do not want to miss opportunities to be our authentic selves. And I think emotional intelligence would help to bridge that gap if people would take the time to say, this is who I am. With all my broken pieces, this is who I am. You know what I mean? So, I'm so excited. There was another question that one of our listeners says, how does a person emotionally motivate themselves internally to be an asset and not a liability externally? I know that was waiting. Let me read it again. How does the person, you got it?
I got it. And again, here's the thing. I'm a keep it simple kind of girl.
Come on.
I go back to that self-awareness piece, because here's the thing, that if I know, so for me, I know that I am not a detail-oriented person. And therefore, if I am working with a team that the majority of the people on that team are detail-oriented, it's real easy for me to say that y'all are just being anal. Y'all are just, I don't like working with y'all. However, if I have self-awareness, I come back and I say, you know what, Thecia, the issue is really about you. It's about you don't want to show up on time. It's about you don't want to go through and edit what you submitted. So here's the thing. You're going to be mindful to show up 15 minutes early. Mm-hmm. You're going to be mindful that once you've completed the document, that an hour later, you'll come back and you will reread it so that it will be edited. So therefore, I become what? A contributor to my team versus a liability to my team. And versus me going, y'all got the problem. If y'all need to change the time, y'all know I can't show up at 1:00, so y'all need to start having a meeting at 1:30. That makes me a liability. Because I'm wanting everyone to bow to me. And here's the reality: if that 80% of the people can show up at 12 o'clock, then I have to recognize that that's something about me. And so many times we want to project and say it's about the other person.
That's it.
And 9 times out of 10, it's about us. So again, I believe that so much of it comes back to our ability to tell the truth about ourselves. There's a quote that I simply love by Virginia Woolf. And what Virginia Woolf says is that you cannot tell the truth about others until you're willing to tell it about yourself.
That's good. That's good.
We love telling about other people. We love to throw some shade.
Come on.
How about throwing a little shade on yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I think that so much conflict in relationships could be resolved if we were willing to tell the truth about ourselves. And here's the other part of that I don't like to tell the truth about, Thecia, because it hurts.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to deal with stuff. And let me just share this one last piece again, because I think that so much of this comes from self-awareness. You know, I worked in long-term care for about 3 years. I oversaw, it was a acute care department. And the services we provided were occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. And under the physical therapy branch is where there was what we call wound debridement, wound care. And I can remember walking into the facility one day and there was this horrible, horrible stench. And I was like, oh my heavens, what is it? Did something die? And the physical therapist that later on the next day said, hey, come with me to this room and I'll so you can see what that smell was. And there was a patient there that was on their side, and in their lower back near their buttocks was a gaping hole. And what they explained to me is that, you know, when we are sedentary and many times when you're ill, bedridden, that the body breaks down. And so that little sore had turned into this major wound. And so part of physical therapy is that they go in and they literally scrape out that area to the bone, And then they take something and they cleanse it out, and then they pack it with gauze, and they do this so many times per day. And what had happened is that I got to see the progression of that wound healing, and it smelled, because here's the fact: we are flesh.
Yeah.
And if you leave a steak out overnight, it ain't pretty. If you leave chicken out overnight, it ain't a pretty smell that you wake up to. And so over time, though, watch that wound that was kind of like this begin to come down, and eventually it was beautiful. And I share that story when I talk about self-awareness, because that's what has to happen, is that we have to get to the point to realize that sometimes we walk around with our nose curled up. What's wrong with them? And the reality is that the stench is coming from you.
Right.
Because of your unresolved wounds and the emotions around that.
Absolutely.
And you have to be willing to say, you know what? I don't trust because of XYZ. I don't love myself because of XYZ. I find it hard to ask for help because of XYZ. And as you dig that stuff up, it hurts, it's painful, it stinks, but then you begin to repack it. And over time, it heals.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing. I can't tell you if you'll be healed tomorrow or if it'll be 10 years from now, because it is a process. Knowing yourself is a process. Self-awareness is an ongoing act.
Absolutely.
I pray that I've got at least 30 plus years left. So that means that I am continuously learning about Thecia.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to do it.
And that's the part. People don't want to participate. I put a quote out, or I said it somewhere. I said, you have to participate in your own deliverance. You got to participate in your own healing. And you can't go to a practitioner. You can't go to a counselor and expect them to do the work. When they say, go home and I need you to journal, or I need you to do this, I need you to sit in your pain for like a day, or I need you, whatever the case may be. People think it's dumb. They think it's stupid. But like you said, you have to, you have to bridge all of the dirty stuff. You got to unpack it, clean it out, and then pack it with the good stuff so that you can be healed. And I think a lot of people, they don't want to do the work, but they want the results.
Yeah.
They want the results. They want everything to go away. And when you were saying something about people always putting their nose up and pointing the finger, we as a society have a terrible habit of deflecting, and I call it self-preservation. You're trying to preserve your own ego, trying to preserve your own your personality, or who you think people think you are. And I think that they miss the mark, or we as a society miss the mark, when we're looking to blame everybody else as opposed to looking at the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because that man in the mirror some days got hanging skin. The man in the mirror some days got acne, and it can be whatever. It doesn't have to be an actual physical deformity or anything like that. But you're looking at that man or woman in the mirror, and you're realizing, hey, I'm a liar. Hey, I'm a gossip. Hey, this about me is not really true, or this about me is weak, or whatever. And I think it's more painful to accept who you are than it is to be honest with other people about who you are. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes. And I also want to say on the other side that self-awareness is also about exploring all the amazing things about you.
Absolutely.
Because here's the thing, sometimes people have written a script for you that you're too loud. Because I remember being a little girl and people say, oh, you're too loud, you talk too much. And I stopped, I think many times I may not even introduce myself initially to people because, I don't want to be thought of as talking too much, or, many times even when I'm doing these types of programs and lives, it's like, am I talking too loud? You have to be able to also celebrate the good things about you. And
Absolutely.
what I encourage people often to do is to do a life audit. Life audit, and to identify all those amazing things that you do, because so many times we do things really well and we don't even think anything about it.
Right.
And that goes back to that idea about missing opportunities. That many times we're asking, I need more income, I want more friends, I want more whatever. And here's the thing, is that all those things actually are on the inside of you, and they lay buried because what? We have not done the work. We have not participated in the process. Yes. That you have to learn to celebrate yourself. So part of self-awareness is also about identifying and discovering all those really amazing things that people have actually gone and created whole new careers. They've created whole new lives. One of my Facebook associates here in this space, she sold her home and moved to a whole nother country because what? She was willing to do some work, obviously, and to realize that, what? There's a new way of living. I don't have to live just in the United States, that I can live abroad and that I can go and take ministry to the world. But that's about self-confidence. That's self-confidence. And that self-confidence comes from what? Being able to identify the good things about yourself as well.
Absolutely. You said something, you said, are you too loud or whatever? When I was growing up, I promise you, every grade school report card, they used to put comments at the bottom. I don't know if you're around my age. I'll be the speed limit in January. So when they would write in the comments, Andrea talks too much. That's my first name. They say Andrea's very talkative. Andrea is a social butterfly. Andrea. And so I was talking to my mother the other day because at some point between grade school and I got to a point in high school, I was shy with the exception of those few girlfriends. I didn't want to talk to people because I was always told I talk too much. And I was telling my mother the other day, I said, who would have thought that after hearing for so many years that Andrea talks too much, that she would be a preacher, a teacher, a talk show host, a speaker, a coach, or whatever. I said, so what they thought was a flaw, God turned it around for my good, because now I have to use my voice to do what I do. And, we were having a conversation at the top of my biggest dream is to be a speaker, a transformational speaker on larger platforms. When I say larger, I'm not saying I have to be John Maxwell larger, but I love to see people's lives transformed.
Right.
So I think about that. What other people thought was a flaw, God is using it for his good. And I also had another young lady who said to me about 10, 12 years ago, maybe more than that. She told me, you do too much. You is there anything you can't do? And I was kind of broken by that. And I was like, well, I'm going to stop sharing my gifts. I'm going to stop telling everybody what I do. And then I guess about maybe 10 years ago, God opened me up and said, how dare you hide everything I've put in you? Use it all. And
Exactly.
so that person now can look at me and say, oh, okay, I get it now. She's like, well, you sing, you dance, you this, you that. I said, yeah, but that's who I am authentically. But that doesn't mean I have to hide it because you don't like it. And then I had to think, well, maybe that's her underlying insecurity. That has nothing to do with me. And so I oftentimes tell people when I'm counseling them or whatever the case may be, how you feel about me is none of my business.
Right.
Because I'm aware of who Michele is. And I have come to a place of loving me. Right. Finally. You know what I mean? So this is real. It's a real struggle for some people. Any final words to our guests about emotional intelligence, how they can find you, your website let me give the website. It's www.theciajenkins.com, and her email is thecia@theciajenkins.com. Y'all go out and check her out because she's amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Michele, thank you for the opportunity to come and have a conversation. It's always a pleasure. Definitely please go to my website. Just check it out. If you want to get in contact with me, please feel free to do that. And also my Black Friday special still continues. I am having Bold Speaker Intensive. The promo code is intensive to get, actually it's intense. I apologize.
Okay, let me
it's intense. Yeah. Okay. It's the word intense. And you get 55% off. The course is actually $350 with the 55% off. It will be $157.50, I believe. It will be held on December 11th and 12th from 8:30 to 5. It is virtual, so no matter where you are in the world, you can attend. And the whole idea is I'm using that bold strategy, that becoming self-aware, owning your actions, leaning in and listening, developing and nurturing relationships as a platform to assist leaders and entrepreneurs in getting their message out. Because as a speaker, as a leader, as a facilitator, you've got to have a sense of self-awareness. You've got to know what it is that you bring to that audience. Each time, every week when you come on here, Michele, you know who you are. You know your strengths. You know your weaknesses. And that helps you to what? Do a better delivery. It's about owning your actions. It's about the ability to be flexible so that maybe if someone doesn't show up on time or if there's a glitch in the show, that you can what? Bounce back in a matter of a moment because of the ability to have a growth mindset, to have that flexibility and that resiliency, leading in and listening, being able to connect with your audience, being able to connect with your guests, and then developing and nurturing relationships. And that has allowed you and encouraged you to what? Have a wide array of guests. So yes, being a effective speaker, trainer, consultant, minister, teacher, CEO, is about being bold, knowing who you are, being able to manage your mindset, learning how to connect, and embracing diversity. So I want to encourage you to go ahead and invest in yourself and to come and spend December 11th and 12th with myself and some amazing leaders in the world. All right. And that's it.
Well, we are so excited. I tell you, this has been good. The hour goes by so quickly. It goes by so quickly. And, because this could be an ongoing conversation, and it should. I think for those who are listening, those who are watching, that they sit down and just really, as the year gets ready to turn over, that they sit down with a pad and a paper and ask themselves, who am I? What do I feel? How do I feel about myself? What do I bring to the table? All of those things are important because I think people forget that it's okay to ask those questions, because if you're not up to snuff for you, how can you be up to snuff for somebody else? And if God made you fearful and wonderful, how dare you present junk? So it's time for us to sit in who we are and embrace it, and then let God use it for his glory. I didn't mean to preach, but amen. But we need to understand who we are, right?
Exactly. And I just want to add one more resource. I don't know if people can see this. I've named off several books, but I did bring this book so I would have it near me. And suggest this because it's an easy read. It's something that you can sit down and just read from time to time. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And it just simply has some very simple activities in here. There are strategies on how to build your emotional intelligence. So I want to recommend that. And again, it's an easy read. There's things that you could actually even share with young people in your life. If you are in management, leadership, I think this would be a great tool to even use with team development. So just wanted to also, again, provide another resource because, again, you are your own best teacher. Once you have the framework, go out. And if you aren't able to invest in coaches and trainers and things of that nature, there's plenty of information out there and there's plenty of books. So I just always want to give people options.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been amazing. This has been amazing. I love Thecia. She is just, you're becoming one of my long distance best buds. Because again, I told her earlier before the show started, I said, I've been stalking you. I said, I'm watching your life, girl. I'm watching you. And I'm just so excited for what she is doing and how God is using her. And it's just such a blessing to be connected with great women like yourself. I'm wanting to come up. And so I am, ensuring that God is allowing me to reach out and touch women who are doing great things. Because if you want to, go up, you got to go with people who are already there doing what you want to do. And so I'm excited that we're connected forever. You cannot get rid of me, ma'am. So
that's developing and nurturing relationships.
That's right. You don't even think about it. This is not going to happen. You're not going to get rid of this one. Okay. And so again, I'm so excited. Thank you so much, my dear sweet sister, Miss Thecia Jenkins, for coming on Life Matters with Michele. And for those of you who are tuning in, certainly you can watch the replay on my YouTube channel, which is Life Matters with Michele TV Official. That's Life Matters with Michele TV Official. It also can be heard on Fridays at 4:00 p.m. on sensationalsoundsradio.net. I'm putting it out there everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, radio, whatever. Just come find me. And then if you would like to be a guest on the show, I am now booking for June 2021. That means I'm booked up until then, right. unless somebody drops out. I'm booked up until June. So I'm taking I'm taking guests for June 2021. And again, we are talking about what matters in our community. Life Matters with Michele in our community. Once again, I want to thank you, my dear sister, for coming on, for joining me, and for being such a blessing to our audience and to me as well. Because like I said, I'm going to hijack. I'm going to be like, what's Thecia doing today?
Well, I am so proud of you. I don't think people realize the work that goes into what you are providing for the community. Aww. It's not easy. And the ability to stay consistent. So thank you. I honor you because I don't think people realize what happens behind the scenes. And so thank you for your consistency. Thank you for all of the topics that you have brought this past year and continued success. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. So season 2 starts in January. So every 6 months, it's a different season. So again, I invite you to tune in to Life Matters with Michele TV Official. Certainly listen again on sensationalsoundsradio.net on Fridays at 4:00 p.m. This has been a blessing. Thank you, Thecia, for being on today's show. I am your host, Michele Irby Johnson, and this has been Life Matters with Michele, where we talk about what matters to you. You all be blessed and have a great day.